Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and right here, I have set number 10497. This is the brand new revamped LEGO 90th Anniversary Galaxy Explorer from 2022. The set is 10497 because the original set number was simply 497. This reimagines the Galaxy Explorer as a fully modern set, and actually if you adjust for inflation, it is cheaper than the original Galaxy Explorer despite being a lot larger. So we've got the actual set right here, which you can see it is jam-packed full of features, and this will be the focus of the first part of this review, just kind of taking a look at the set as a whole and walking you through all the different features you have, from the rover at the back to the detachable engine pods and the landing gear, which does retract. All sorts of really cool things to see here, but that's not all, because in addition to just this, if you purchase multiple copies of the set, you can not only build a revamped version of the two-man ship, which was one of the other spaceships that they made around the classic space era, but you can also build a one-man ship as well with a third copy of the set. And I'll be talking through exactly how these stack up to the original models and exactly which pieces were used to make both of them and what pieces you have left over to see what sorts of things you can build with the alternate pieces. So having a revamped Galaxy Explorer has been one of the dreams of the LEGO fandom for a very long time, and I am incredibly excited to finally have this in hand to showcase for all of you. Now the set does introduce a lot of brand new prints and recolors, such as say the printed classic space logo here, you've got the printed text on the side, as well as all sorts of different controls on the inside. Really great stuff here to look at, and I'm incredibly excited to bring the review to all of you. Now what's very cool is that they actually managed to incorporate many of the functions of the original set itself, such as the opening back to let the rover actually be deployable, like so. So we'll be taking a look at that in particular, as well as of course adding in a few new functions inspired by classic space itself, such as the detachable engine pods, which were not a feature of the original set, but definitely make a lot of sense in context with classic space. And right above me, right here, are the sets that started it all. You can see the original Galaxy Explorer set, and here's the new one right alongside it, where I will be hanging them up right next to each other once the review is over. But you can also see the original two-man ship and one-man ship right here, as well as a revamped mock, which I reviewed a couple months ago, kind of reimagining the Galaxy Explorer. Way before we even had an announcement that this was going to be made, I decided to build a revamped, newer version of it, so I'll be comparing all of these throughout the course of the video. But so, we need to blast off to space in order to take a look at all these sets, so let me go get my spaceship and we'll be right off. Alrighty, so here is the 2022 version of the famous LEGO Galaxy Explorer set. Now, if you are a LEGO fan, you probably have already seen countless reviews and images of the model itself, and so since the focus of this video is kind of comparing it against the older models, as well as showing off the combination models, I will try to keep the segment where I briefly review this set as short and concise as possible. Although I do have to say, this is probably one of my favorite LEGO sets in recent history, so do forgive me if I go on a little bit longer. As you can see here, the bottom base is fairly standard, and we'll get back to what these are supposed to represent later on, but actually this is a feature from the original set. But the landing gear is actually really well done, utilizing the LEGO Mario pieces. These actually were introduced for the LEGO Super Mario theme to specifically allow him to kind of hop and scan barcodes on them, but they work perfectly as landing gear, and yes, they do retract very smoothly, so if you wanted to, you could have the ship be fully flat on the ground, like so. When it's landed though, I definitely prefer to have it with the landing gear showcased. I just think that definitely just looks a lot better, and as you can see, it's very easy to just pop them out and land the ship like so. And it really does give it a nice elevated feel. Now, of course, the cockpits can be opened just in a very standard fashion. You've got the click hinges up there, and inside we have room for 4 different astronauts. These are actually the same colors of astronauts that appeared in the original set, 2 red and 2 white, and it's a little bit obscured right now, but a massive amount of brand new prints were developed just for this set in particular. Rotating the set around, you can actually see some of them right here. There's one that specifically showcases the 497 set, which you can see right there on the screen. Of course, you have a technical readout in the center of the actual vessel itself, which is very nice, and they even brought back this classic styled panel right here, which is used a total number of 2 to 3 different times in the model itself. Of course, as we move on to the back here, there is a full-on living quarters for the spacemen, including what is, yes, a LEGO Bionicle reference. Fans of Bionicle will immediately recognize as Toa Tahu's canister, or maybe it could be one of the Paraka canisters on Voya Nui, you don't know, but it's probably supposed to reference Tahu's canister, which is right there that these spacemen are exploring, and I think it's really nice that they actually managed to include a reference to Bionicle in this 90th anniversary set. Of course, in the back we get another one of those panels that almost looks kind of like a medical display panel to me. Another one in there, and as we move on to the back side, there are yet more panels, which you can see right there. This is actually a combination of 2 different classic panels, which have been combined into one 2x2 flat. What is also very nice is that this model actually does include a separate side build which has remained literally unchanged from the original days of Classic Space. It's this little robot here. He actually came in a much smaller space set, but they wanted to include it because this is kind of an icon of Classic Space. Of course, removing the robot, we actually have a full-on sliding door here. Now, this is a really cool function where you slide the door open and you're allowed access to the rover, which is parked in the back. And fans of the LEGO Galaxy Explorer set and really any classic space set know exactly what is coming next. So, zooming out and rotating the model around here, let me showcase the main feature of the set, which is probably the biggest selling point of the Galaxy Explorer itself. You specifically just move these to the side here. As you can see, the little rover is deployable. Push this down, pull the ramp out, down it goes. That is a very, very satisfying motion. You can see the sliding door actually mounted at an angle there, which is really interesting. But there you can have it. The rover can drive all the way back up. It's super satisfying because once it's up, you push this up, you slide it in, pull that up, and you are good to go. So a very satisfying feature that is pretty much saved from the original LEGO set. One of my favorite brick-built details here is the usage of the Nexo-Knight shield as well as a number of different panels and plates to recreate this arrow logo on it. This was actually a feature of the original set, which was demonstrating that you can remove these to the side, but the arrow is actually done really well, and I love that it's brick-built and not just printed. They very easily could have just printed a side panel and integrated it into the model, but this is done really nicely. And of course, the kind of 3-pronged loudspeaker klaxon type piece did not actually feature in the set because they needed something a little bit larger, so instead they used a combination of multiple different buckets which were introduced in the 2011 Kingdoms line, which honestly work out fantastically. Obviously it's a very simple build, but it really does harken back to that original set. Now you do have some compartments on the side that are actually able to store different bits and pieces. There's a pair of black air tanks there. Maybe that's a hint that we'll be getting a new version of the black classic spaceman in a future set, because not really sure why else it would include a black one. Personally, I would have loved if they recolored it to light gray, or the newish kind of bluish light gray, because I think that would be a lot better in terms of giving us a new piece that a lot of people have been wanting for a long time, especially because we already actually have the light gray classic space torso, but hey, maybe they'll do that for the future. Now, there is a new feature that is actually included in this model that was not in the original set. These right here pop right off, and these handles come up, and you can actually use them as different spacecraft for the spacemen itself. Sure, it's a little rudimentary, and obviously it just looks like they are sitting on top of an engine, but hey, this is basically one of the most fundamental classic features of any classic or vintage LEGO retro-styled space set. Little modules that separate off and become their own spaceships. And I am beyond happy that they managed to work in a reference to that and actually put it in the set itself, because of course the original set did not actually have this, but basically every other classic or retro-styled space set afterwards did have that. Now, finally, just to sum a few things up here, obviously I am incredibly pleased with the set because the building techniques are actually surprisingly not super complex, but they're done in a really satisfying way that did offer a few surprises along the build process. As you can see here, this entire piece is actually mounted on a slanted angle piece, and they do the exact same thing for the two-man ship, which is really interesting because it's not a very common technique to actually have these mounted at an angle. Of course, the original set just used standard slope float pieces, but this way they were actually able to make it feel a lot more sleek and smooth rather than just going directly up at an angle from the flat base of the ship. And while a lot of neoclassic space fans would rather there be less studs instead of more studs, I actually really like the compromise between having a studded look and still actually being able to integrate this very, very solid type of wing construction, which is very similar to how they actually did the Batwing. I believe that was the first time I saw a building technique like this in sets, where entire build assemblies are mounted at very odd angles and held on by a combination of different bits and pieces and bars and clips and whatnot, all stuff integrated into the model itself. It's a really well done side wing piece that feels very seamless to me, and I'm a big fan of it. Honestly, if I were to complain about one thing where the building techniques were concerned, I do feel like the yellow stripes honestly were kind of integrated better into the official model, the original one, rather than the new one. As it is right now, the yellow stripes actually just are stuck on there, so they really do obviously stick out, and it looks like they were just placed on there, which absolutely they were. The original set actually did have them integrated into the build, so it looked like they were more painted on rather than blocks that were placed on top of it. I feel like they could have definitely managed to fit in some sort of a way to make this feel a lot more integrated. Now, I'm not 100% sure how they would have done it because this tile piece right here, this plate here, is directly on top of a lot of internal bars and clips and whatnot that are keeping this in place, but maybe if they just made it one stud thicker, I don't know. There's some sort of way they could have actually made these feel a little bit more integrated into the design itself. That being said, it is definitely a minor nitpick. I love the fact that you can actually fit all 4 of the classic spacemen in the cockpit, and now it's time to bring over the classic Galaxy Explorer and really get some comparisons going here. So this right here is the 2022 version, and swooping in from the 1970s, specifically 1979, we have the other Galaxy Explorer. So what is probably the most important thing that I want to note here? A lot of people are going to say, wow, LEGO has gotten a lot more expensive over the years. I mean, this is a lot bigger, but it is a lot more expensive. But no, it's actually not. If you adjust for inflation, this set is more expensive than this. Yes, this is cheaper than this. So has LEGO really been getting more expensive? I mean, certain sets from certain themes definitely have, but for original stuff like this is probably the best priced LEGO set we have gotten in a while. In fact, if we pull up the exact inflation calculator, this cost $32 in 1979, which makes that around $130 in today's money. And honestly, that'd probably be $150 given the amount of sets being priced today. Now, of course, it's not necessarily a one-to-one fair comparison. This did come with a base plate, 2 different crater base plates. It was a large crater one and actually a landing pad one, as well as a little small moon base build on the side. However, that being said, this is a lot larger, includes far more pieces than the original set, base plate and craters included, and this also is honestly the much better and more intricate build. So it's honestly kind of funny when I see a lot of folks saying that, wow, LEGO's gotten much bigger and more expensive because this is worth $100 today, when really this was a lot more expensive. But with the price out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how exactly these stack up. So obviously you can see that a lot of the references are just one-to-one. The placement of the stripes, the way that the logo is positioned, the cockpit arrangement, everything is very similar to the original set, albeit I guess the second cockpit definitely does feel like an extension of the first rather than feeling like a separate housed building, but I do think that actually is done a lot better. Now, of course, if we flip this open, you can see some of the massive jet engines on the bottom there, which were of course directly referenced in the newer model, which, as I showed you at the beginning of the review, you actually have the jet engines on the back there. Now, the way to open the cockpit here is you simply open this up and you actually have seating for the 2 red classic spacemen. This one is a somewhat similar way, but the entire thing does open up, so I guess that does make sense given the modern building techniques. And of course, the feature that started it all, we have the detachable feature in the back here. Let me just remove this. And it's a somewhat similar feature where you actually have the ramp go all the way down and our boy can drive out with his rover like so. The rover build is quite similar and in some ways very different, and this actually originally did include a gray air tanks on the front of the rover. I now am actually using that for my own gray classic spaceman, but that was a really nice feature that I do wish that they actually managed to keep for the newer model. Altogether, it is very interesting to do a size comparison here. Obviously, the older model is not the most stable of builds because the engines will just kind of pop off at the bottom there, but once we get that back on, it's not too bad actually, and it's really stable for its time. Actually, LEGO sets got less stable over time, specifically in the 2005 and 2006 era, so this is actually really solid and still very swooshable, although the newer version kind of blows it out of the water, which justifiably is so because it is using a lot more modern building techniques and pieces available. Now, for a direct size comparison, I'm just going to angle these upwards here. It's a little bit hard to fit all of this in my review studio, but you can see that the length of the original one really only goes up to the first cockpit on the newer one. They are very comparable sizes, but it definitely does feel like a direct evolution from one to the other, which is very interesting to see. I really appreciate the way that the shaping is done to really accentuate the large swooping angles of the set. The actual front part of it has been elongated quite a lot more, and so here we have it, the two different Galaxy Explorers. But wait, there's more, because once this takes off and launches off into space, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you actually can purchase another version of this model to build the different smaller iterations of the Galaxy Explorer. So just for reference here, this is the two-man ship, and this is the one-man ship. Both of these smaller vessels were released in 1979, the same year, landing gear came off there, but it was the same year as the original Galaxy Explorer, and they essentially were cheaper, smaller alternatives of what was supposed to be the exact same build. So they were very similar builds, just at a smaller scale. Obviously this is a much smaller craft right now, but you can turn them around. What was very nice is that the original two-man craft literally kept the same exact function as the Galaxy Explorer. So what you can do is you can open this up, and instead of a rover coming out, it is a bit of a storage box, but hey, it's really cool they actually did manage to fit that function in. Unfortunately, the smaller one doesn't actually factor that in, but I don't really blame it because that would be really impossible to factor in for this model, but they even still have some side opening compartments if you do want to store some stuff inside. So this is how the cockpits open, like so. This one is a very similar function to the original one, and that is how that works. But then the question is, how do these stack up next to the newer versions of the one-man ship and the two-man ship? Well, let's start off with the two-man ship and bring it over right now. So here we have the two-man ship, which is the alternate model version of the Galaxy Explorer, and at the end of the video we will be delving into exactly what alternate parts we have left over, and maybe even some possible alternate builds that you can make with the models themselves after you have to buy 3 copies of the Galaxy Explorer to be able to build the different models. So I actually really like this because this really feels like it captures the spirit of the original two-man ship. This isn't just a scaled-down version of the Galaxy Explorer because, as you can see, the original two-man ship had a much more blunt and kind of flat front element, which is captured absolutely perfectly with this model. It feels more like a transport shuttle than an actual fighter or scout ship or something like that, which is a really interesting way to set it up. In fact, this is probably the most faithful interpretation of one of the classic ships that we've actually gotten, even compared to the original Galaxy Explorer, because as you can see, it just has the 2 stripes on the side, and of course, as we rotate everything to the back here, it does still have a function. The way this works is a little bit interesting because you have to lift up on that piece, and then you have a little bit of a storage or engine block type thing that you can take out and move around. Exactly like in the original, you take off something on the top, and inside there is some sort of a block to actually remove. I really like how they made this very close to the original model, and building it, while in many ways it was similar to the Galaxy Explorer, it did feel like a very different build in some sections, especially with this kind of lever that has to swing downwards and you have to push up. Honestly, the only main complaint is the white color choice there. That could have been done a little bit better, I think, if they just had a gray one, but everything else is really well done about this model. And you can see it still keeps many of the same sensibilities as the original Galaxy Explorer, such as using these landing gear elements here that fully close up, like so. Of course, you can see a little bit more of the Technic interior on this one, not quite as well covered up as the Galaxy Explorer itself, but it is still pretty well done given the parts that were available, and I do like that you can actually see some of the internal mechanisms because it does make it feel a little bit more realistic. Now, the two-man shuttle itself obviously features room for 2 spacemen, however the controls have actually been switched up. You have one pilot here with the classic steering wheel, some of the control panels, and another one using these 2 different knobs as if he was controlling maybe the gunner area, or let's say these radar bits and pieces, or maybe even this one is controlling the turning and this one's controlling the speed. Who knows how this setup works, but I really do like how they differentiated the controls here, and it does feel like its own very unique thing. Of course, there isn't really too much else to say about it. We can do a quick size comparison here. Let me just zoom out here and show you exactly how these stack up. So it actually is a lot closer in size compared to the original one, and what's very interesting is that if we bring over the original Galaxy Explorer model right here, and we want to do a bit of a size comparison, these are almost exactly the same size in terms of length and even the overall top size. Sure, there's a couple things that have been changed around with the one-man ship to make it closer, or the two-man ship to make it closer to the original model, but size-wise, it's very close to the original Galaxy Explorer, which really shows us just how far LEGO has come. Now, if they sold this set for the same price as this, then that would be something really crazy, but if you look at it, these are basically the same size, and this still has a lot more pieces. But now let's move on to the one-man ship. So let's take off with the Galaxy Explorer and the two-man ship and take a look at our one-man offering. So flying in here is the original LL918. This is the one-man ship from 1979. And here is the newer one-man ship from the Galaxy Explorer set. So unfortunately, this one does not even try to interpret or include landing gear. The bottom of the newer vessel is just fully flat. There's no landing gear whatsoever. Feel like there is a way they may have been able to incorporate it even if it didn't retract, but I guess if it didn't retract, then what's really the point, because then it would stand out in comparison to the other ones. And this does feel like a much more smaller and sleeker scout ship. Unlike the newer versions of the Galaxy Explorer, it does not integrate the angled side pieces, where actually if you paid closer attention to the two-man ship here, you'll notice that it did actually include these sloped elements. Everything was mounted on a slope, whereas this one, everything is just mounted kind of in a standard configuration with standard slopes. Much like the original set, you can actually see the exact same angles are at play here, and only the Classic Space logo is mounted at an angle. One thing I really appreciate about this spacecraft, though, is that the steering wheel controls are actually angled downwards, which allows the pilot to actually have the steering wheel right up to him so he can drive it. That is really well done. Sure, you probably could have fit 2 more people in here, but again, because this is the one-man ship, they had to fill up the space somehow, and that's a really good way of doing it. Now, of course, moving it on the back here, this is again very faithful to the original, right down to some compartments on the side which can be opened up and have stuff for storage, as well as just the engine block here, which does not open and kind of just stays as a single engine. Now, my favorite thing about these is that they really do feel like different evolutions of the same type of spacecraft. It really feels like this is an evolution of this, and you kind of have them being an adjunct scout ship type thing in tangent with the other larger Galaxy Explorer ships. And they even retained the only single antenna being used right there, which is a very nice touch. Now overall, what do I think of the models in particular? So let's bring back some of the more modern ones. This is just kind of the standard small LL918 here. But in terms of the alternate models, I think that they are pretty good. I am very happy that they do exist. However, having to buy 2 different sets for them does leave a bit of a bad taste in my mouth in terms of price, because I did have to spend $300 to get increasingly smaller ships, and I just really wish that there was something else official that they would recommend that you do with the other pieces left over. Of course, it is LEGO, you could take apart the Galaxy Explorer and rebuild it, but the fact that you cannot build each of these simultaneously is a bit of a letdown for me personally. Obviously, that would have been impossible without including a second copy of the Classic Space logo, or even a second copy of this printed piece right here, and of course extra pieces like these and whatnot. But I do feel like maybe there was a way to have built 2 different spacecraft out of the original model without having to compromise on so many pieces being left over. Now that being said, I already have seen some stuff online of things people are doing with the alternate pieces. I would love to see your own builds. Do let me know in the comments below if you have built your own stuff, and if you've built some of these alternate models, what do you think of them? And overall, I am just very happy that these do exist. They are near perfect renditions of the classic smaller versions of the original spacecraft, which is very, very well done to me. I am a huge fan of the way that all of these different vessels turned out, and again, especially the two-man ship was surprisingly really one of the most accurate vessels in terms of capturing the more stout, blunt front of it, and really the whole shaping of it all in all was really fantastic. But now I think it is time to wrap up this part of the review. Let's take a quick look at some of the extra pieces left over, and then we can go into closing thoughts. So here we have all of the Galaxy Explorer models together. Obviously not all of these fit in my review studio, so I just wanted to kind of showcase them on the floor of my study room right here. But as you can see, there are so many amazing different details to these models that really make them feel like a natural evolution of each other. One of my favorite things is just going from the top-down view and taking a look at the different silhouettes of these models, just seeing how they stack up, like the, again, flatter front of this one corresponding to that. You have the standard classic silhouette of the Galaxy Explorer with the original, and the two different scout ships right here, which share a lot of similarities, although this one is a lot more dagger-like, which, I don't know, is an interesting new look. It certainly is a new way of interpreting it, and they did have to work with the parts they had on hand. I just personally would love to see a smaller version of a one-man craft in modern building techniques that wasn't really limited by just using the part selection from the much larger Galaxy Explorer. Still, a man can dream, and maybe one day we will get a full-fledged vintage retro style revamp of a classic space theme again, because imagine if LEGO made an entire theme based off of these models. You can already see that these are really well done, and they actually look very distinct despite being alternate models of each other, and I almost kind of wish that LEGO just offered these as their own standalone products, maybe tighten them up a little bit, and just charge them for different price points to allow people to experience the Galaxy Explorer. I feel like they could have done something like this as a $30 set, especially if they shortened it and made the windscreen a little bit smaller. This probably would have been a 40, maybe a 50, but given how well priced this is, maybe this would have actually been just a 35 to 40. And I really do feel like LEGO is missing out by not actually having smaller offerings to complement the larger product offerings like so. All right, so here I have the different iterations of the Galaxy Explorer now hanging from my ceiling. You can see the new version of the two-man ship here, the original two-man ship. We've got the one-man ship there, the very small one, and the original one right next to it, or sorry, the newer one right next to it. And finally, both versions of the Galaxy Explorer flying off into space together. And I feel like this is the perfect way to sum up this review. With both of the alternate spaceships built, here is exactly what we have left. The pile right here are the parts left over if you build the medium ship, the two-man ship. And the part pile over here is what you have left if you build the one-man ship. Now, as you can see, there are quite a lot of pieces here, and initially I was kind of hoping that I would be able to build both ships with just one set, and then just supplement a couple parts of my parts collection. Unfortunately, though, I realized very quickly that wasn't going to be as easy as I thought, because, as you can see, just bringing over, say, the small one-man ship here, all of these wedge elements are actually used up fully completely on all the ships. So if you want to build both of them at once, you need to have all of these angled wedge elements on the underside and on the top to be able to actually build all of them, which is kind of a big issue if you're trying to build it, because those are very integral to the actual design of the spaceship itself. Excluding obvious things like the space logo right here really only appearing once in the set itself, and a few of the control panels as well only really appearing in certain iterations. Those are probably stuff that you could swap out with your own collection if you wanted to, but really the main thing is that the bulk of the spaceship itself is used up when you're building each of the spaceships. That is the Technic frame on the inside, the wedged wing elements, and so on. Everything else, though, is pretty much still there for you to build with. And that gets me wondering, is there anything else that can be built from each of these two parts piles, or better yet, combining the two parts piles themselves? I may try to experiment with that a little bit on my own, but if you have any ideas, do let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if everyone else has actually done this on the internet or online, if you have a link or something that someone has done something with the extra pieces included, I would love to hear that as well, because there are quite a lot of extra pieces here, including two of the very nice transparent yellow windscreens, and it'd be a shame to let those pieces all just go to waste. Aside from the transparent yellow windscreens, these printed pieces are also left over from building both versions, specifically one of these and one of these from building the two-man ship and all of these from building the one-man ship. These actually are all exclusive pieces that were introduced for the set, so it's really cool to actually have some of them left over, including the very special one that is a Bionicle reference. You can see here the classic space astronauts exploring a Bionicle canister, as well as a reference to Blacktron on the radar here, plus one of the dishes showcasing the Galaxy Explorer model itself on the control panel right there. All in all, it's very cool to have so many different printed elements that are pretty much exclusive to classic space type designs and very retro Lego type designs being left over for these sets, which absolutely will be very useful in building your own models in the future. And they barely fit in one large-size Ziploc bag, but right here are all of the leftover parts from the two extra sets after building both the two-man ship and the one-man ship. You can see there's a lot of really good classic space goodness in there, from the two windscreens to the base plates, as well as the blues and grays and whatnot. Not to mention, of course, the aforementioned printed tile pieces are all in here as well. I can see folks being able to somewhat easily recreate the rover from the original Galaxy Explorer set, which is probably very doable given the amount of different tires left over. And you also probably could, if you wanted to, also recreate these kind of smaller jet pods on the main build as well. Haven't tried it myself, so maybe there might be a couple pieces not available, but you could probably build something somewhat close to both of these side builds, just if you wanted to supplement your classic space collection. However, I will be setting these parts aside just in case anybody online is able to figure out a better use or a larger build for all of them, which I'll be very much happy to build if that ever gets made. I figured a good way to wrap up this video is to briefly kind of discuss the different differences between the boxes from old to new. Now, I normally don't keep a lot of Lego boxes, but these ones were really special. Obviously, they're a little beat up, but as you can see, let's focus in on the two different boxes here for the, I believe this is the two-man ship and the main Galaxy Explorer here. Setting aside the two-man ship and focusing in on the Galaxy Explorer box, you'll notice that this actually did have, in its time, a flip-up lid where you could actually see some different builds that you could do, different configurations of the build as well as the base and whatnot, and they actually did show off a lot of the unique things when it was actually fully packaged. Now, of course, they had the Legoland stripe in the yellow and blue on the top here, and then on the back we have a lot of different alternate builds, which again, I kind of wish they had even more alternate builds, much like they did in the classic eras. But now comparing it alongside the newer box, I am really pleased by just how well they were able to replicate this. As you can see, it looks pretty much almost exactly the same, from the crater and the tan on the bottom to the spaceship prominently displayed. You've got a moon in the background this time instead of the space base, but everything else is very, very close. It's actually really interesting because this kind of diagonal line with the name of the set typically was found on many of the original Lego boxes, but that was even before this one's time. So they were kind of trying to mess around with combining different eras of Lego with this box. But of course, as you rotate them down, you can see they both say Galaxy Explorer or Legoland in the same exact font, as you can see with the yellow and the light blue there, which is really fantastic. And finally, on the back of the box, using the different squares to showcase different windows of what the set does is a really fun way of doing things, and I'm glad they were able to retain pretty much the exact same design. So, of course, there are a few things that are a little bit different here on the sides, but of course, the boxes do really feel like they are a natural evolution of each other. You can actually see the logo placement and everything is exactly the same. You even have the photo of the Galaxy Explorer fully opened up, much like it is on this image right here for the newer box. So a lot of effort went into actually making them feel very similar. And again, you can just see the evolution of how far Lego has come with the difference between these two things. But with that, we have summed up our look at the brand new LEGO 2022 90th Anniversary Galaxy Explorer model and the two different alternate builds that you can make by buying extra copies of the set. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of these models? I certainly had a blast building, reviewing them, and comparing them alongside the originals from 1979. It has been a long journey to get here, and it's so cool to see a modern LEGO classic spaceship. And again, let me know what has been your experience with the set. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye-bye for now. And just as a fun fact, this is what the Galaxy Explorer looks after falling from about a story up because I was careless and dropped it. Rebuilding time!